welcome to today's session of the NGIGO virtual lecture series. We're continuing our lecture on questionnaire design. When we design a questionnaire, the word design has a lot in it, not just scribbling things down and then call them questionnaires. The last time we did an exploration on how to go through the literature and then find out how you can get a lot of information that can aid you in structuring your questionnaire itself. Then after that, we came to look out for ways that you can put the questionnaire in a structured manner and make it appealing. But then after you've done all that, the question is that how can you be sure that what you have done is enough to get you the information that you want? There should be something that should tell us that yes, this instrument that we are using it to measure something. So that instrument that we are actually attempting to use to measure the thing will be adequate enough to give us the results that we want. So what that moves us into what we call the psychometric analysis of that particular instrument. So when we're talking about the psychometric analysis of the instrument, then in this particular case, we want to be sure that we are using, like the literal words, an instrument that is reliable, an instrument that can be dependent on, and an instrument that can actually distinguish between the particular construct that we are looking for. Now, when we talk about construct in this case, normally construct is the theoretical attribute that we want to measure. So most often than not, those constructs are abstract in nature. So we want to measure intelligence. You cannot look at somebody's face straight away and then see the person is intelligent or not. You cannot look at somebody's face and straight away you say that, oh, this guy, he has knowledge in what you call family planning, or he has knowledge in any other attribute that you want to measure. So you realize that those attributes are actually abstract. So what we do is that we develop a construct of those attributes, and that means that we are representing those attributes by virtue of certain facet of knowledge, and then we think that by using that particular instrument we will be able to actually elicit from the individuals that we are actually trying to distribute those instruments to be able to assess, and then in a standardized way be able to quantify these abstract attributes that we may be looking out for. So it moves us into what we call the psychometric analysis of the instrument. Now, every instrument, before you can say that you want to depend on that instrument has to go through this type of analysis, right? Yes. So we are still doing questionnaire design. So like I said, that all those things that you do, all those analysis that you are actually going to undertake to make sure that we are sure that you are not using any instrument that is not reliable, an instrument that will get you what you want, an instrument that we know that at the end of the day we can depend on the results, the outcome of that instrument, to make judgments, to get an understanding of something that exists among the particular group of people that we are actually doing with. That is what we call the psychometric analysis of that instrument, right? So when we say psychometric property of an instrument, in this case I will use instrument, measure, questionnaire, skills. I will use them interchangeably, okay? So when I talk about instrument or questionnaire or scale, I'm actually talking about the same thing. That is something that you have put together and you are going to use that to measure a theoretical construct, right? So we will go back to what we were doing earlier on. When we were doing Likert scale 1.1, somebody has put together an instrument, and that instrument was supposed to measure attitudes towards what? People with epilepsy. Like I say, attitude is an abstract thing. Unless you have probed, okay, there is no way you can see somebody go in and then say this person has a good attitude, bad attitude, or whatever attitude. So now the construct becomes what? The attitude towards what? Epileptic patients. And then you are trying to put up a certain instrument that will be able to measure the attitude of those people towards epileptic patient. So, like I said, when it comes to those constructs business, it's just like we have been doing in classroom. We come to class and come and teach. And then after that, we want to assess your understanding, the amount of knowledge that you have gotten on a particular subject. So what we do is that we sit down and then bring out a construct in a form of what? Questions. And then by those questions, we are thinking that if we give you those questions and then you provide us certain answers, we'll be able to assess the amount of knowledge that you have you have gained. And then if we see that you have not got enough knowledge on that particular subject, which is a prerequisite for you to go out there and then go and perform a certain skill, then we will say, oh, you don't have enough knowledge. So stay back and acquire enough so that you go out and then go and practice. Teaching is very simple. Okay. And when we find out that students have enough of those knowledge, then we congratulate them. And so you have excellent knowledge. We will give you A. So we grade even your knowledge. Okay? But normally when students get A, they have gotten it. When they get F, the teacher has given it to them. Yes. But you realize that if the questions are set such that the questions that are set, you yourself that went to sit there and then you are writing the exam. After you have come back, you have problems with some of the questions that have been set. You may say that, well, the questions were not fair because either the questions do not elicit the particular knowledge the person came to give, or you realize that maybe the question, the teaching was in so many parts. Okay, like I like using Kweku's biostats as an example. So Kweku comes to class and teach you biostats. But at the end of the day, the questions that he said, you realize that he said that the question is meant to elicit knowledge in biostatistics. But you realize the question that he said, if you do not chew and pour, there is no way you'll be able to pass. So in that case, Kweku has set up a certain instrument which is supposed actually to elicit knowledge, using grading knowledge. But because the instrument is defective, in actual fact, what the instrument is assessing Babadier. Baba what? Babadier. You see, so that particular instrument is not actually getting us what we want. Or he might have set the questions from just one topic that he came to teach in one class. So those of you who are preparing, if you happen to have read that particular topic, you will get what? Or A. Meanwhile, it doesn't mean that your knowledge in biostatistics is so good. It's just that time and chance find you at the right place. The thing that you just read, when you went inside, your apple has tore and then you got it and then you tore it there. So in actual fact, we will be saying that you are the best in biostatistics when it comes to knowledge in biostatistics, but on the ground, you are the worst in the class. So the same way, we are setting up these instruments to be able to go and classify our respondents into certain grades by virtue of whichever attributes that we are interested in. So those attributes will come out such that at the end of the day, they reflect what actually is on the ground. But they will not come out and tell us those that have poor knowledge in, let's say, epilepsy will come up and they are they are having the best knowledge. When those things happen in your class, you complain, isn't it? Yes, you complain. And nowadays, even in our educational setting, we are able to say that if you get a first class, it doesn't mean that you are the best as far as the course is concerned. Because we understand that the mode of assessment does not actually elicit the kind of skill or competence that we are interested in. It's all chew and pour. So our questions that we set, you should go through some of these processes. So when you are setting questions, they will ask you, does the question part of it reflect knowledge? Part of it reflect skill, application, and those things. So that at the end of the day, you realize that you are able to tell that this person is the best in class because the requisite competence that a person we want is what is getting it. Right. So the same way, if you set up questionnaires and you are sending it out there, the questionnaire should also have this kind of attributes. And then we should be able to know that, well, this questionnaire will be actually be measuring the things that we are looking out for. Right. So when it comes to psychometric properties of instruments, there are three things involved. Now, first, we ask the question, how do we know that we are indeed measuring what we want to measure? So the fact that you have scribbled something together and you have go out there and you have distributed it to what? To respondents, and you have come out, does not mean that we are actually measuring what we intend to measure. And in most cases, like I tell you, if you found students' work, when they bring it to you at the end of the day, well, the person is saying he's measuring what? Knowledge. But none of the questions actually involves knowledge. I've always been asking this question. When they say they are measuring knowledge, the first thing they will ask you is that, have you heard? So it means that if you have heard of something, it means you have knowledge on it. Can that be true? A lot of the things that you have heard, do you have knowledge on them? Does that mean that you have knowledge on them? So have you heard of Ebola? And then somebody start the Ebola and the Ebola. Yes, he has heard, but is the person knowledgeable when it comes to Ebola? So the questions that you put on the ground should be able to elicit whichever information that you are looking for. So the first thing we should be interested in is that whether what we indeed intend to measure is what we are measuring. Then the second of the questions that we should be there, can we be sure that if we repeat the measure, we will get the same results? So I come to you, you are a respondent, and then I ask you a question today, and I get a certain results. Then by virtue of my instrument, our instrument has classified you as what? Knowledgeable in a certain attribute. Then I come back and repeat the same instrument, and the same person. Then my instrument says you are not knowledgeable. The next time I do it, you say you have moderate knowledge. So straight away you tell me that is not a reliable that's not a reliable test. So we should be able to make sure that we repeat that instrument and we'll get up the same results, all things being equal. If we repeat that instrument among the same group of people, we should be able to elicit the same, should be able to classify them into the same score. Now, the whole agenda for sending questionnaires out there to go and examine somebody on a construct is that the questionnaire should be able to discriminate between a certain group of people based on a certain attribute. So I bring you the questionnaire, just like the questions in class. I bring you the questions in class. You answer the question. At the end of the day, by virtue of the answers that you give, I'll be able to grade somebody to have excellent knowledge. I'll be able to grade somebody to be to be poor, and give the person F or E. I should be able to grade somebody and say, you have gotten 60. 60 is what? B or B plus. Your grading system sometimes confuses the owner. Yeah. I should be able to get all those grades. So what that particular question is doing is, as far as that particular knowledge is concerned, it is actually discriminating between different groups by virtue of their competence in that particular subject that we are talking about. So the first in all the things you are sending out there, you want to go and ask people their choice of what do you call delivery, their preferred choice of delivery. At the end of the day, you want to classify people and discriminate them into those that want normal vaginal, spontaneous delivery, those that want to opt for cesarean, session, those that want vacuum extraction, those that want to do it in a water bath. Yes, those that want to do it in a water bath, those that want to stand. Standing and delivering is another method. So at the end of the day, by virtue of the instrument that you distribute, we'll be able to classify your respondents into what? Into different groups. So that instrument should be able to actually what? Discriminate between those that are like this, those that are like that. So the first and most important thing that we should be able to get from every instrument that you actually issue out is that it should have what we call a discriminative power. So that is discrimination. So by virtue of that particular instrument, the scores that we get, we should have what? Certain discrimination. So now, if we are doing Kwaku's class test, and at the end of the day, we are having two people scoring 60. Now, if you are talking about discrimination, then it means that as far as the knowledge of that subject is concerned, those who have gotten 60, they are at par in terms of their what? Of their knowledge base. If we have somebody that have what? 80, and another person that have what? 60. As far as discrimination is concerned, on the ground, the person that have 80 should have a higher levels of competence in that particular subject than the person that had what? 60. That is, equal scores should represent what? Equal levels of the attributes, and then different scores should be what? Representing what? Different attributes of the level of the particular different levels of the attributes. It should not be the case that Dela and Fafa, as far as their competence is concerned when it comes to cooking facility, is the same. But I come and distribute an instrument, and the same people, Fafa get 70 and then Dela get what? 60. In that case, that particular instrument is not able to elicit that attribute of what? Competence in fertility cooking. Hello? Yes, my teacher told me to use funny examples because that is what sticks into people's head. Yeah. Good. So again, it should not be such that the law is better when it comes to cooking fertility than MFA. But when we distribute the psychometry instrument, what do you call it, questionnaire on fertility, competence on fertility cooking, MFA gets higher marks than what? Dela. When we are getting those kind of scores, that means that that particular instrument lacks what? Discriminating power. Right, so 3 things are involved when it comes to discrimination. That is, people with the same score should be equal to each other along the measured construct. So people with the same scores should be equal to each other along the measured what? Construct. So if you score 50 and another person scored 50, on the ground, your knowledge level should be what? Should be the same. So we're going to take an example and see how sometimes people can score the same, but their knowledge or their attributes are what? Different. So we will quickly move to the psychometry that we were using when it came to teachers' epilepsy. Let's use this one. Okay, let's use this one. So on this section, we are supposed to assess emergency preparedness and first aid skills of what? Teachers towards epileptic patients. Hello? Right. So let's look at the first question. I will introduce something into the mouth to avoid tongue bites. Yeah, so I think if somebody is having a fit, and then you introduce something into the person's mouth to avoid the person biting their tongue, I think that is a good thing, right? We all agree, right? So in this case, if you agree, that should be the 5. Strongly agree, then this will go this way. Then this one is going to be 3. This is going to be what? 2. And this is going to be what? 1. Let's take the second question. I will remove injurious agent near students experiencing what? Seizures. So if students are experiencing seizures and you remove injurious things from there, that is also a good emergency preparedness, right? Okay, is it and skill? So this one is more of skill. So that is going to be also 5, 4, 3, according to how the person code his things. 2, and then what? 1. So because of time, we will just take these 2. So now let's say that we are using this to assert Fafa and Mr. Ajin. So Fafa and Mr. Ajin. So they have answered the questions already. I have the results. So this was what Fafa said. When we asked Fafa because she's a midwife, this was the answer Fafa gave. We asked her, I will introduce something into the mouth to avoid tongue bites. Fafa said, strongly agree. Then we asked her the other one, I will remove injurious agent near students experiencing seizures. Then Fafa said, strongly disagree.
I strongly agree with you.
Strongly agree, and then what? Strongly disagree. So in terms of score, how much does Fafa make? 6. Then we asked Mr. Ajin, who is a mathematician and knows nothing about epilepsy. So when we asked him the first question, I will introduce something into the mouth to avoid tongue bite. Because he's a mathematician, this is not an equation. So he says what? Neutral. He doesn't know anything about it. Then we asked the second one, I will remove injurious agent near subject. Again, this one is not tan theta or cos theta. So again, he goes like he doesn't know. He is neutral. At the end of the day, how much does Mr. Ajin score?
6.
How much did Fafa score?
6.
So we are having 2 people that have scored the same what?
The same 6.
The same 6. The same 6. But the knowledge base, we understand that the mathematician says he knows what? Nothing about the thing. And the midwife at least have 50% of the knowledge that we want. We emergency preparedness that we what? We expect from her. So we are having the same score, but in actual fact, different emergency preparedness and what? First aid skills. So this particular instrument cannot be said to have what? Discriminatory property. Because the same score does not necessarily mean that you are having what? The same knowledge background. So it does not discriminate between Fafa, who 50% was right, and Mr. Ajin, who's 100%, he didn't even make any, attempts. Hello? Good. I hope you understand what we are talking about now. Good. Let's move on from here. Good. So that is the first thing we are saying. So people with the same score should be equal to each other along the what? The measured construct. So if anybody score on that construct 6 and the other score 6, we expect that they should have the same what? Knowledge base. Then let's move on to the next one. People with different scores should be different to each other along the measured what? Construct. So that is also self-explanatory. We don't need to go back and demonstrate it, right? So if you have different scores, they should have what? Different knowledge base on whatever you are actually assessing, or practice, or whatever, construct wise, whatever you are actually assessing, they should measure what? Differently. And if your scale is that the higher should be more, then the one that have more should have what? More of their particular attribute than the one that has what? that is no. Then the next one is that the degree of difference between people and the difference in scores should also matter. So I have 3 people that have answered that particular question. One person scored 50. The other person scored 60. And the other person scored what? 80. 50, 60, 80. Now, on the measured construct, the difference between 50 and then what? 60 is 10. And the difference between 60 and 80 is what? 20. So it should mean that the difference between the second person and the first person is double the difference between the third person and the what? The second person. Hello? If you want to complicate things, we will say 0 makes a meaning. Hello? We will say 0 makes what? Has a meaning. In this particular case, it starts with what? The 0, that means that there is nothing there. 0 means there is nothing there. Do you remember the time we did temperature? And we say that the degree temperature of what? 0 degrees Celsius does not mean that there is no what? There is no temperature. It is only 0 Kelvin that means there is no temperature. And that is why you cannot put temperature into a certain category. Hello? Yeah, we will recapture those type of those kind of what do you call it? Lectures, because we didn't capture them last time. Good. So in this particular case, the intervals are meaningful. Hello? Yeah, so if you have a construct like this, the intervals should be what? Should be meaningful. Where an interval of 10 and an interval of 20 means that the interval of 20 is a double of the interval of what? Of 10. Because if the grades, the differences does not make meaning, then we cannot actually say somebody that have 80, somebody that have 70, and somebody that have what? 50. In terms of their grades, you are moving from the 80, have the highest, followed by what? The 60, and followed by what? The 50. Unless the 50, 60, and then 70 are representing just categories. Like we have nominal data, where they are just codes. They are representing something, but they don't have any attributes. But in this particular case, when you are making a construct like what we are seeing, then the interval should be what? Should be meaningful. Hello? Yes. So these are the 3 things that you need to note when you put together any what do you call it? Construct to measure anything. These are the things you should look at. So you should consciously take your time and go through, just like we have gone through with the other thing. If the person has evaluated it that way, he would have known that the construct was what? Was faulty. And then the results that he will get does not represent what was what on the ground, because they lack what? Discriminating ability. Hello? Yes. Then the question that we ask, how can we be sure that we are indeed measuring what we intend to measure? That particular question leads us to what we say. So, are these particular questions that we have put together, indeed, are they valid for what? Measuring that particular what? Attributes. Are the questions what? Valid questions. So are the biostats questions valid questions to assess competence of students in biostatistics? Are they valid? So I'm teaching you biostats, and when I finish and I'm come to ask you questions, I'm asking you questions that borders on what do you call it? Geography. Or history of US. So straight away, those questions will not be valid, isn't it? Yeah. So that moves us into what we call validity. That moves us into what? Validity. So validity of the instruments. Validity of the instruments. And don't forget all these questions and all these attribute we are raising of a questionnaire is towards a particular construct that is set to what? To measure. So how sure are we indeed those questions we have put together is measuring what we want? Right now we have seen somebody wants to measure perception about teachers, but in actual fact his questions and the way he structured it, he's measuring something else. They are not valid questions to measure what? The perception of what we call teachers as far as epileptic students are concerned. So when it comes to validity, it is the degree to which an instrument measures what it was designed to what? To measure. So the instrument was designed to measure what? Perception of students as far as epilepsy is concerned. Question: at what degree can we say this instrument is measuring that particular what? Construct? So the instrument is designed to measure the knowledge of the respondents in family planning. So at what degree do we think that the individual inputs in there is measuring the knowledge of the respondents on family planning? So if you go and ask him, have you heard of family planning before? And he says yes. The father here heard of family planning before. Does that make him knowledgeable of family planning? Where did you hear it from? That is the second question they will always ask. Radio, television, or a friend. So if he heard it on radio, that makes him more knowledgeable than when he heard it on what? On television, or when a health worker was the one that what? That asked him that question. Hello. So you realize that yes, you are asking questions, all right, and the questions are supposedly related to what? Family planning, all right, but does those questions what? Elicit knowledge in family planning? Are they valid questions that elicit knowledge in what? In family planning? Sometimes when you are talking like this, it looks abstract. It's good if I show you some of those instruments. So let's just go and take an example about it. I don't know where those standards came from. So let's start from this one like this. This one is what? Knowledge about what? Contraception, isn't it? The first question, have you heard of contraception? Second, where did you or your knowledge of contraception came from? Have you even heard? That question that was So if the person found it in a magazine, that will make him more knowledgeable than if he found it on what? On the internet or what? And these questions are supposed to be what? Knowledge about contraception.
Person said they saw it in
magazine, yes. Said they saw it in this. Said they saw it in this. So in actual fact, the questions might not be valid for the particular purpose you are actually what? Trying to assess. Hello? If you take 80% of the questions that have been put together, you find these things in there. Maybe 80 have even come to them. Fafa, the ones you have seen all have this, isn't it? Yeah. You yourself, your own have it, right? It has become something like a standard operating procedure. But that question may be valid for something else, but not for assessing knowledge. That is a source of information, if anything at all. That is the respondent's source of what? Of information, as far as contraception is concerned. But that is not respondent's what? Knowledge on contraception.
Where are you now?
Joy, but
yeah.
Somebody's getting.
Can you project it loud?
If somebody's getting information from, say, a nurse, I am believing to think that a nurse may give enough information to the patient for him to know more about
like during antenatal, for example,
than the person hearing it on the radio. On just a brief thing.
What about if on the radio it was an expert?
unless we're discussing the whole thing.
What about it was the nurse teacher that was on the radio?
The radio had a time limit.
And you think that what shows that the nurse even had time for the person?
Yeah.
Are you getting me? So what about in a magazine? What about on the internet? There was even a video on it. So that particular thing is just the source of information. It is not knowledge of what do you call it? It's information. It's just a source. Yeah, if you go through that questionnaire, you see a lot of things that are not there that cannot be said to be knowledge. All right, let's move on. So when it comes to validation, these are the things we are talking about. Are the questions valid for the purpose for which they are actually set to? And we can see that as we ourselves go through it, even on the surface, we realize some of the questions cannot be said to be.
Normally, when you send the questions yourself, it will be difficult to come back and say that this thing is not.
It's because you have not gone through the process. So let's go through the validation process and you see what the processes that you are supposed to go through. Right. So validation is actually in 3 contexts. Now, the first context is that the form of the tests. First and foremost, the form of the what? Of the tests. So you are interested in finding out something. You are interested in classifying people into a certain particular group. Now, which form is the test going to take? Which form is the test going to take? So the test itself, should it be an open-ended? Should it come with what? Close-ended? So we are interested in the form of the test. So you have to decide, is the form of the test appropriate for what you are actually assessing? You realize that there are certain things that you should have rather probed further with the person in order to elicit what you want. And then restricting the person to what? To say he should make choices will not actually give you what you are actually looking for. Or that may even prompt the person to choose a choice which may be correct, which in actual fact not because the person knows, but he is just giving you out what? One of the options. Hello?
Let's give him something.
Yeah, not let's give him, because there are options there. He has to choose one of the options. So you are asking somebody on something, and instead of rather letting the person list the thing, you are providing the person the choice. So as soon as he reads the choice, he now think about it and say, oh, okay, this one sounds nice, this one sounds good. So there are certain things that if you are looking out for from people, you don't need to provide the answers there. Yes, you make it open-ended. So list for me the contraceptive names of or types of contraceptive that you know. That will probe more better into the person's knowledge than saying which of this is a contraceptive, this thing, condom, this thing, that. So the person will condom, oh okay, then just take it. This, then he just take it. Then he just use it. Are you getting me? So sometimes you provide the answers for the person, and the person answers it. Then when you come back, you come and use it to judge his knowledge. When meanwhile, it is the question that rather have assess the person's has assessed itself.
Is it the same thing that people say? Avoid leading questions.
Yeah, avoid leading questions. The form of the leading question. That's the form of leading question. But sometimes more of the structured questions actually just lead people on. So you could leave that place open and ask the person rather to provide you the answer, and then you put the answers there.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. That is why there is this publication on MCQs, and the person gave it to the class that he has actually taught, and then called cleaners in his school, and then gave it to them to answer. And you know the best in the class? One of the cleaners.
Wow.
Yes. So the highest scores came from the cleaners. So you see, this particular, the form of that particular question was not actually assessing the particular knowledge background that he wants. So the form is the first thing that you think about. The next thing is the purpose of the test. The purpose of the what? Of the test. So every test that you put there, you should be able to know the purpose for which that test is going to be what? The outcomes are going to be what? Used for. So the outcome will actually determine how, when, and whatever you should do as far as the questionnaire is what? Is concerned. So these are the things that should come into your head when you are building up questionnaire. The purpose for the what? For the test. Then the next and the last, but one of the most important, is the population for the test. The population for the test. So you sit down and then you are going to administer a questionnaire. You should actually know the population dynamics of the particular group of people that you are going to distribute your questionnaire to. So if you are distributing your questionnaire to university teachers, you might not care much about the level of English you put that particular word, that particular question. Okay, yes, you can say concatenate and go scot-free. But if you are going to give it to my grandfather and my grandmother, and you are asking questions and using words like delineate between the two, yes, ameliorate and delineate and those things. So even the language, the form of the questionnaire, are you getting it?
Yeah.
And how it should be structured, it actually depends on the population for which that particular questionnaire is what is targeted. So the questionnaire could be okay, everything could be right, but because the particular target group may not understand what you are doing, it may be useless. Or because the knowledge level of the particular group that you are actually targeting will be so high than the way you are structured the questionnaire could be what? Could be useless. You realize we were talking about the last time somebody want to assess nexus, what do you call it? Give me that thing. It says documentation. No, was that what we wanted? Not that one. Is that on what? Resuscitation. Neonatal resuscitation. Nurses' knowledge on neonatal resuscitation. And a person was going to make a question or a checklist and say they should what? They should take it. Now, for a nurse who have been to school and have been taught those things before, the likelihood is that even if he doesn't know and he read that thing, he will know what one is right and which one is wrong.
Yeah.
And he will check it.
No, but if it is knowledge that we sought to see.
His knowledge and practice, that is what he wanted to find. And he has a checklist.
Knowledge side,
Yeah.
there should be questions that can test the knowledge.
Yeah, but he has made a checklist.
For the practical.
So you're giving the leading
Yeah. So he has given it for a nurse, for every nurse. If you read that checklist,
so the nurse has gone through the nursing training school, has gone through
he's supposed to be practicing.
How to resource.
No, what I'm saying is, if he's giving those answers under the knowledge, any kind of nurse will still be able to.
Yes.
That is exactly what I'm
When
saying.
we come to the practicals.
Yes. So in this case, the mode of the instrument, which is a checklist to assess nurses, this thing, the likelihood is that they will come out knowledgeable.
Sure.
Yes, but practicality,
Yes.
you will not find them there.
Yeah.
So for that particular population, it will not work. Are you getting it? But if you are giving it to second years or third years nursing student or something, you getting it? Yes. You might get some, what do you call it? The levels that you are actually looking for. So the population should be one of the things that you should consider. So this is the context for the validity we are talking about. The first one is what? The form of the test itself, the purpose for the test, and then population for which what the test is actually target. So all this should come into mind before you put up your questionnaires. And after you've put them down, you should think through these things, okay? And then be able to make sure that you put them inside. Now we go on to the types of validity. that we may find. And that is where it gets interesting. So types of validity. The first one that we have is the face validity. Face validity. So when we say face that validity, after the construct has been done, okay, after the construct has been done, we are saying that on the surface value, does that construct seem like it can measure what it is purported to measure? Hello?
Hi.
So on the surface value, does that construct seem to measure what it's actually meant to measure? So the sense that a questionnaire looks like it measures what it was intended to measure. Now, this is how you can do face validity. After you have put your constructs together, okay, you may pass the construct on to somebody that you think is knowledgeable in that subject. And what that person is supposed to do is to read through that and analyze those instruments and see whether on the surface value it's going to get you what you really intend to measure. So, for example, the last time we have a question here, that question was set, the options for the question was set such that it was actually giving the forms of birth. And the options were what? Preterm and then what? Term. It was term and then what? Preterm. Just by the look on the surface by our midwives, our physical midwife, we realized that was not an exhaustive options enough because other people could have post term. Hello? Yeah. So if such questionnaire has been given to an expert, these areas will be seen and then the corrections will be will be taken.
Is it different from pre-test?
No, you are not pre-testing. You are giving it to expert to look at it on a surface value. Hello? Yeah, so you brought the constructs together and then you are giving the construct to people who should have knowledge in that particular subject to do their own assessment of the and comments on the question. So normally, whatever comes into your mind or whatever you have come across in literature, you may put them together in a pool and then find different sets of professionals to look at it. So sometimes they can come in even different groups. So these groups come, they look at it and they make their comments, which one they think should be taken out, which one they think should be added, and which one they think should be modified. Then you move on to the next group and look at them. So on the surface value, you are doing an assessment to see whether the questionnaires are likely to measure what they intend to measure. That is face validity. Hello?
Hi.
Hello?
Hi.
Yeah, so that is one way of doing the face validity we talked about. The other way around is that you yourself, you may just put the question out there into a cohort group. Okay? A group similar in characteristics to those that you are intending to survey for your actual sampling. But in this case, they may be of limited numbers. Then when they come up with the results, you read through the results and see whether the understanding that they have is the same as you intend for them to have. Hello? Because by virtue of the responses that they give, you will know whether they understand the question as it's supposed to. Because you are sitting on your desk and you have constructed a certain question. The respondent's understanding of that question is key to him or her providing you with the right answers. You will realize that there is a lot of deviation. They are giving you responses that has nothing to do with the questions that you are asking. Straight away, that should tell you that the way that particular instrument input has been constructed needs further look at, because when you send it to the field, you might not get the needed response. Hello?
Hi.
Yeah. Let's move on. So these are the things that you look at when it comes to face validity, where the question is phrased appropriately. Where the question is phrased appropriately. We have seen one right now, where instead of saying what is your perception of students on this, it rather went to where the society and things would think. So the idea may be right, but the way the question was phrased was wrong. So we didn't do anything. We have turned ourselves into experts. We look at the question on the surface value, and we think that cannot be used to assess perception of teachers as far as epilepsy is concerned. So the questions were not phrased well, were not phrased appropriately. Did the options for responding seem appropriate? So did the options for responding seems appropriate? Was it appropriate to use a Likert scale for that particular response? Should the response be an open response, or the response should have been options other than Likert? And this was where the last time we had a banter, where you have people, instead of taking continuous variables, end up grouping the variables for people to check. And we use an example like age. Instead of asking people, what's your age, and recording it, people group ages on their sheet. And to the extent that even when they don't get anybody to check any of the groups that they have done, when they are doing analysis, they put that group there and say 0%. So 18 to 20, 20 to 25, 26 to 30, 30 to 70. They do that, and then when they finish, and then 40 to 50, there is nobody there. They make a graph and say 40 to 50, 0%. Meanwhile, this is a continuous variable, so you are supposed to capture it as a continuous variable. In this case, what you need is to capture the people's actual age. And when you capture the actual age, and during analysis, if you even decide that you want to group the age, now you know the values you have, and you'll be able to put whichever interval that you want on it. But in actual fact, when it comes to statistical analysis, scientific analysis, you don't group things just for grouping sake. You group things with a scientific reason. So if you are grouping things and you know that maybe for this particular disease that you are talking about, there is the difference in terms of its predisposition between a certain age group and a certain age group, that is where you do the grouping. There are certain diseases, they are higher after menopause for ladies. So you may want to put them into different groups as to those that are that menopause and those that have not, and then, or you may want to check them that maybe adolescents, okay, compared to other group. So there should always be a scientific basis for for doing the grouping, not arbitrary. And decide whether it should be 5 in 5, the interval should be 5 or should be 10. Hello? And we said that even if you want to group, after you have taken the raw data, normally the reason that they give is that the analysis is becoming difficult when you don't group them. But that is a lie, because if you want to group after you have taken the data, as we will see as we go on, it is just a click. Hello? Yeah, so did the response options for respondents seems appropriate? If it's a continuous variable, you take it continuous. Okay, and the same way, like we saw the last time, the response was not appropriate because they captured only 2 parts of it. That is term and preterm, but they didn't capture post-term. Hello? Yeah. So these are the 2 things that you check when it comes to face validity. Let's move on to the next type of validity that you may be interested in, and that has to do with content validity. Content validity. So if you are talking about content validity, it's the degree of representativeness of the items or inputs on an instrument to the domain of the construct it is meant to measure. The degree of representativeness of the items or inputs on an instrument to the domain of construct it is meant to measure. Good. So this one to refer ourselves to one of the skills we used again. When we were doing the skill or the construct that involve the quality management thing that we did here in US, and I'm going to just project it quickly. We realized that we set out certain constructs, domains that actually were assessing certain particular things. So for example, if you look at question 7 down, the library staff are helpful to me when I need assistance. I am satisfied with the quality and extent of material available for me in the library. The library is open at convenient hours. Now, these 3 questions are supposed to measure the domain of what? Library. Now, the question we want to ask ourselves is, these 3 items, are they representative enough to cover the things we need to assess as far as library services is what is concerned? Are they more? Hello? Are these the facets of the library that will make us be able to judge the quality of service of what? Of the library? Tafa, can you think of something else? Kwaku, can you think of something else? Can anybody think of something else that is important to assess if you want to assess the quality of library service in a school? Can anybody think of something else?
Think of something else.
That has not been captured with these 3 items.
The library too far. That's location.
Right, maybe location. Maybe location. Maybe the location. The location of the library to our classrooms or our, what do you call it, our hostels.
How does that reflect in the quality of things they do in their services?
Well, maybe the library is hiding in the cemetery, and where it is, it's very difficult to access it in the evening.
The catalog system.
We are interested in the library service that is being provided.
Is it?
The catalog provides enough information.
No, if you are providing us service and your location is not accessible, how can we access us? How can we enjoy your service?
The service is different from location.
How can you provide us a service when your location is not accessible and we'll be enjoying your service?
So we are talking about people who are able to get there, whether they get the
No. The question is that it imports on infrastructure and everything.
Okay, but
then if you are mentioning the infrastructure wise, then you can mention these things.
Location may be a factor.
Location may be a factor.
People have no other option. That's the library.
Yes.
That is far or not, you have to go there for the material we need. In that case,
so if the place is not accessible, would they enjoy the service?
But if it is about the distance somebody wants to complain about, then we should reframe the question. It shouldn't be of services, because what they take in there does not matter the distance you came from. Fine.
Don't forget, take your time. Take your time.
That we are offering them.
Take your time.
Does discriminate as to who came from far and near. Then you can bring it in.
Take your time. Look at the content of what you are looking for. You are looking for what? Students' experience. So in this case, is the student experience with the library facility or service that is being rendered by a school. So if you have located the service, what we call the library at permanent site. Okay, if the library is located at permanent site and we need to take 3 cars before we can access the library and it is not accessible, what kind of experience are we enjoying? Bad one. So I will accept the distance, the location. Just like the opening hours. Which other thing? You were talking about something.
You were talking about the catalog system.
Catalog system.
Whether it's able to provide the
easy to find what you want.
Using the catalog.
No, okay.
Are there beautiful ladies?
Oh, it's valid.
Right. So when we are talking about content, we are using this as an example for content validity. Okay. So we want to see, is this particular questions that are there? Okay. Yeah, are they enough? Are they representative enough to capture the construct that we are interested in? In this case, the domain of the construct we are interested in. Are they representative enough? Hello? And for you to be able to come out with that, you should be able to delve deep into the what? Into the subjects. Sometimes you have certain constructs and the main thing that they claim they want to assess, you cannot even find anything there. You cannot even find anything there. Okay? We have somebody with constructs that wants to do characterization of what? Hypertension. Okay, for my chemical pathology friends. And then all that he's providing for characterization of hypertension in a certain locality is either the people smoke or either they take in alcohol. Meanwhile, when you want to characterize hypertension, we should be able to know the people you are dealing with, the stages of hypertension that they are in. What are the kind of complications that they are having? Have their organs been affected? Are you getting it? So, presenting us only the demography of the people that have hypertension and saying characterization of hypertension, that construct was not enough. The content was not what? Valid to say characterization of what? Hypertension. Hello? Yeah. So when we are talking about construct or content validity, we want to see whichever that you are using. It doesn't necessarily mean that there should be so many questions. But whichever questions that you are using, are they what? Representative what? Enough. Can we stand on those questions and say that we are actually what? Measuring whatever construct you are intended to measure. Hello? Yes. Okay. Any additions, subtractions, divisions, or
standard deviation?
Okay. When I leave you, you say things.
Okay.
You say things.
Okay.
So, Prof. and the fields have some guidelines for us to follow.
On this?
Yeah, content, when it comes to content validity. It says 1, ignore similar items. So 1, you ignore what? Similar items. So if there are 2 items that are actually what? Similar in nature, they will give you the same thing. So you just avoid what we call redundancy, and then you ignore similar items. And then ensure that questions cover the full range of the what? Of the constructs. Ensure that the questions cover the full range of what? Of the constructs. Yeah, and that can be found in and the fields designing questionnaire.
The books are available, so if you want.
Yeah, designing questionnaire. You can get it. It's just there. Right. We move on. content validity. Was the content of the biscuit valid for the class? Okay. All right, let's continue. But you should have said thank you to Koko, because today it's as if he wants to show love. All right, let's move on to the next type of validity that we're dealing with. Let's move on to the next type of validity that we want to deal with. Okay. Yeah, because of time, we will quickly move on. We'll move on very quickly and then we'll move on to it. So, criterion validity refers to the extent to which a measure is empirically associated with relevant criteria variables. Right, so you're actually using your measure to measure something, okay? So on the ground, how does your measure actually relate to one of them? The things that you are looking for, not one of the things you are looking for. How does your measure the content, how does it even relate to the things that you are talking about? Now, depending on how that particular assessment is done, there are various forms that you can do that particular assessment. Now, you can do that in this case by you are designing your construct. If there is an existing construct that's set to actually provide the same thing, after designing yours, you can actually measure the two together. And if they are supposed to give out the same thing, then it means that your new construct should be able to give a comparable results with the other one. So if you finish and you correlate the results should be virtually the same. Okay, so if you are doing those things together, whilst you are distributing those two questionnaires together, the standard one that is there already and the new one that you have done, it means you are doing them concurrently. So that is what we call concurrent validity. That is concurrent validity. Don't begin. Concurrent validity, in that case, you have two instruments. Okay, a standard validated instrument already. Okay, and then you distribute that one along yours. So each respondent will actually answer two set of questions. It's answering that one and answering yours. Okay, so when you finish, then you can correlate the two together, and that is what we call concurrent validity. But if you are not doing concurrent validity, but you can do what we call predictive validity. Now, with predictive validity, what you're doing is that you are thinking of the future. Okay, so you can assess how in future that's your your instrument will relate to the attributes on the ground. In most cases, the practical way of how people do it is that after the question has been distributed and the response has come, based on the response that a person gets, he goes back into the respondent to try and validate what has happened. Whether the response that he's getting is actually what is reflecting on the ground.
How?
Yeah, it can be done. Now, you know the population for which you send in your thing. So now you have gotten a resource. So as part of the validation, you can meet the people and then you try to find out whether the response that they gave is actually what is happening there. Now, for example, with the quality assurance work that we did, that is what we did when we say we are closing the loop. So after the response has come, we went back and presented the results to the respondents themselves.
What
they provided. So they are saying that, again, there are no books in the library.
So it confirms it.
So we go to the library and find out whether there are books there or not.
Okay.
Are you getting it? So for the attributes that we are using the instrument to measure, the results that we have gotten, we are going to see whether it actually predicted what was actually on the floor. So it's a future assessment.
In that case, what effect is it going to have on?
So if you go there and then there is a different scenario on the ground, then surely your questionnaire is not valid enough to assess what is there.
You've used it to collect your data.
Yeah, so you authenticate, and the right way will be authenticating the results that you have gotten.
Okay.
Hello.
What does that authentication mean?
Yeah, it's bringing you, that is what it's actually bringing you, whether the instrument you use is valid or not. Okay, you have used an instrument that is saying that teachers have high knowledge on what do you call it? Epilepsy, something on epilepsy. That was what the results from the questionnaire came, isn't it? Then after you are finished with that, you go there and engage the teachers and see whether they really have high knowledge.
It's the opposite.
And if you go and it is the opposite, it means whatever results you are having is completely useless.
So the results you get, you throw them away?
It's useless because you are validating the instrument.
Wow.
So if the instrument is giving you something different from what is on the ground, you cannot depend on that instrument.
I see. Research, is you.
So to validate an instrument, there is another way also that you can do this kind of validations also. That is quite concurrent, but it happens with just certain specific instruments where you can use the quantitative to the qualitative to validate the quantitative. So in this particular instrument, you have a qualitative session where the people write their own opinion, okay, on matters. So what happens is that based on what you have gotten from the quantitative, you try and see does it match with the qualitative that you have actually done.
Qualitative is going to be a replica of the quantitative.
Yes, related.
On the same side.
Yeah, but related. Not necessarily the same topics, but related. Are you getting it? But predictive, what do you call it, can be done. You can do that. Okay. Then, in some cases, you do what we call postductive validation. So in this particular case, you are relating your results from a past outcome. That is in literature, if there is something that is there, some unestablished outcomes based on the particular response that you are actually doing. So if you have yours, you try to see whether in literature that is a trend that is supposed to come. So that becomes a postductive validation. Hello? Yeah. So among this one, the most popular one is the concurrent validity. Yeah. The concurrent validity is the easier to do. The only aspect is that the difficulty is that whether there or not there is a standard validated instrument available.
Should it be a standard or an existing?
Yeah, an existing validated instrument. Because you cannot compare something to something when that one itself is not a standard.
When that one is awesome.
You cannot compare yours to somebody's own when that person's own itself is not acknowledged as a standardized instrument. But the thing is, for most of the topics that we are actually attempting, as we saw the last time, they are validated instruments available. Or even if not the same, related. Hello? Yeah. And then there is this item validation index that we will come to it later, that you can also use for criterion validity. Now there is what we call factorial validity. Now, when it comes to factorial validity, it's whether the factor structure of your instruments are actually valid. Intuitively, you can make sense out of it. Now, what happens is that when you have done the pretest, you have the what you call the instrument. You enter them, and then you run what we call factor analysis on them. Okay, one of the popular factor analysis is principal component analysis. It sounds big, but it's easy to do, which we'll be doing. So when you do principal component analysis, what happens is that factors that are supposed, so you yourself theoretically will have your own domains, but when you run principal component analysis based on the response that you have gotten, okay, then you see whether the factor structure, the loadings that have been loaded, it is like your theoretical domains. Because if they are theoretical domain, they are something that is assessing library, we accept that we expect that all the things that are assessing library should be grouped at one, load at one particular factor structure. Okay, so we try and see whether those factor structures are correct. And then you realize that if you run those principal component analysis, you realize there are certain questions that don't need to be added, because the more they add to the questionnaire, the more they reduce the level of explanatority or variability of the question. So if you add it to it, the particular construct you are trying to measure, it reduces the level.
Today, what day is in the afternoon? Your English camp wrong.
All right. So that is factorial validity. Then the next thing is construct validity. And when it comes to construct validity, in actual fact, we are talking about the totality of the construct that we are talking about. So construct validity is the degree to which test measure an intended hypothetical construct, which refers to the extent to which a measure adequately assesses the construct its purpose to assess. So this is more like the totem of the whole thing that we are talking about, right? So after that, the next thing that we're going to go through quickly is reliability. So when we say reliability, like we did in the introduction, if we repeat, all things being equal, if we repeat this particular instrument in the same group of people that we are assessing, in each session, are we going to get the same results? Hello?
Hi.
Yes. So when it comes to reliability, it is the ability of the instrument to produce the same results upon retesting among the same cohort under the same condition. Yeah. You don't expect to get virtually the same thing, because we are dealing with human beings, and then knowledge can take place. That means after you came to distributive today, when you came to tomorrow, if I have gained knowledge on something, you can't say that because of that I should. And again, there will also be recall. Recall bias may also affect it. You remember what he did the last time, and he may want to go to choose the same thing or something. Are you getting it? Yeah. So, but that's why I'm saying, all things being equal, we should not have so much deviation from one respondent to the other as we assess. So that is what we mean by reliability. So when it comes to reliability, quickly rush through the reliability, what we call test available. The first one is the test retest reliability. So the test retest reliability, as we are saying, you distribute the instrument, okay, you take the results. In some few days, you go back, distribute the instrument into the same group of people, and then take the results. And then now try it and see how the results relate to each other. So that is the test retest, validity. Hello? Now the next one is the equivalent forms or alternate form reliability. So the equivalent form or alternate form reliability, you set out the same questions in that particular instrument, that the structure and everything is the same, except some few things that you change. So the person will be answering questions, he will not know that he's answering the same question twice. Are you getting it? So for each question, there are two different There are two different forms. For each question, there are two different forms. So in that case, there's a duplication of the questions. So at the end of the day, you can relate each of the questions to itself, and then find out whether there is reproducibility. The difficulty here is that to set those two questions and not use the same words, but let them mean the same thing. That is where the difficulty is. Yes, that's where the difficulty is. And that is whether there is an alternate form to that particular question. Then the next one is split half reliability. Now, the split half reliability, it's one of the most popular. Okay, the split half reliability, what are you doing? It's applicable to when the questionnaires are long. So what happens is that you distribute the questionnaires, and the theory is that since that construct is coming from the same group of the same thing, if you divide it into two, they should relate to each other. So if let's say you have 10 questions, what you do is that you split them into half. So you have 10 inputs, question 1 to question 10. So what we'll do is that they are all measuring the same construct. So when we finish, we'll split them into into two, and then try and correlate them with each other. Now, the best way to do this is to do what we call odd and even. So the odd and even set is that 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 are in one group, and then 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 are in the other group. When you correlate them together, and then you have what we call the correlation will now show you whether they are related or not. So that one, it involves only one questionnaire distribution. But the only thing is that in the split half, what happens is that depending on how questions are splitted, so if the questions are splitted in different ways, you may come out with what? Different results. Okay, right. So there is a correction of the Brown's correction. When we are doing that, we will do this type of things and you realize that. But the most popular way of the what do you call it? The split halves test is the Crobat Alpha. So what the Crobat Alpha does is that it splits the questionnaire automatically. You won't do that. It splits the questionnaire into all its possible ways and correlates each of them. So what you see, what we call the Crobat Alpha, the alpha that you are getting is actually an average of the correlation coefficient of every possible way that the questionnaire will be split. And if you read through literature, they will tell you a Crobat Alpha of 0.7 and above, it's actually accepted. And it is the most popular way of 0.7 up. You know, correlation 0 to what? To 1. So 0.75, 7 up. But in some cases, they will tell you 0.6 up is advised. Actually, when it comes to reliability, it's not absolutely. We just measure the degree of reliability. Yeah. Okay. Then the rational equivalence. The rational equivalent is the Richardson. Yeah, that's the Richardson's measurement. We may go through that. Then we have the internal consistency reliability. Because of time, we are moving very fast. Then the last one will be the standard error of measurement. Now, the standard error of measurement simply means you're actually trying to estimate into the population how the deviation will be. So if the deviation is so high, then it means that you cannot rely on the instrument. So on this note, we'll bring a lecture on psychometric properties of questionnaire to an end, especially when the time has gone that far. These are some of the references that I came across. I have some fine right types that I didn't get reference for them, but you can get some of them here, okay, and then read on them. So what we'll do the next time round when we meet will be to try and then validate questionnaire ourselves. Thanks for coming. Hope to see you again, God willing, tomorrow, same time, tomorrow, when we meet, and then we try to do the rest of the questionnaire validations.